we ready? Okay. Hi, I'm Amy.
And hi, I'm Audrea.
And this is The Right Crowd. So grab a cup of coffee.
Or a cup of tea.
Maybe a little something on the rocks, and let's get started. So, Audrea, what are we talking about this week?
Yay, it's the beginning of our Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And we're gonna talk about chapters 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, which gives everyone a basic overview of what the book is about and how to use the book.
That's right. And because we want you to buy the book because we think the book is awesome. And you can use the link on our website or in the show notes to buy the book. And we get a little money to help put this program together.
Yes. The other thing is, I totally forgot that they had these, and I may have to go get them. So by the time we're done recording this series, I may have them. They have Save the Cat beat cards.
I didn't even know they had those. So I saw those. Someone from our Stop Writing Alone group with Nicole Rivera mentioned they have the beat cards. I did not know. I have got to have them. So I'm going to go get those.
So maybe by the time we're done recording the whole book, we will both have them. Because the way they're described, they walk you through all the beats and what each one should be. So you don't have to keep flipping through the book for a reference point. Yeah. Which, I mean, I don't mind, and I'm okay with easy.
Yes.
So
I'm excited.
All that stuff, yeah. Oh, and just so everyone knows, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties.
What she said.
I started to say it wrong, and then I was like, I'm just going to make it funny. All right, so that part I'll probably cut out, and I'm going to say that again. Just so everyone knows, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. So if one or both of our screens freeze for a split moment or the words get off a little bit, hang in there. It'll come back, Wi-Fi and all. So anyway, I wanted to make sure I said that so someone doesn't get frustrated and, goes away, because we like you. We want you to stay. Yes. And we have good things to tell you. So it's worth staying. Okay. So what is the first thing we want to talk about?
All right. So what I like about this book in chapter 1 is I learned so much in that chapter. I have so many highlights in that chapter from the many times I've read it. And I think I said this before. I've read this book a few times. I actually have this book in paper, physical form, and on audiobook. Because I do refer to it often, but that chapter 1 is about, we should talk about the title. Save the Cat Writes a Novel. So why is it called Save the Cat? And what Jessica said, and it's based on, Blake Snyder's book that was written for screenwriters to write movies. And Save the Cat is shorthand for a method to get your audience or your readers to understand your character or like your character, make a decision about your character immediately. And what they did on the movies, what they'll sometimes do is they'll have a character that seems gruff and terrible and it's like a serial
killer. You really don't want to like them.
Yeah. And they have that character do something super nice, like help an elderly woman across the street or save a cat from a tree. And then instantly it's shorthand. Now that the audience knows more about the character, they know they're not all bad. And maybe they'll start to root for that character. So you'll see that in movies and you also see that in novels. Right. So that's why it's called Save the Cat Writes a Novel.
Right. Just make them save something and it'll be okay. Now, I do want to point out that throughout the book at the top right here, I have lots of natural sunlight. So right here, she always tells you what book spoilers are going to be happening in that chapter. So if you are reading along and you're like, oh, spoiler 4, I haven't read that yet, or I'm in the middle of reading that, make sure you take note of that. So while you're reading, you don't find out something you don't want to find out. For instance, this first one is Ready Player One, The Help, and Misery. There's more, but those are 3 of the ones. Confession time, I have not read Ready Player One. I've seen the movie, of course. I have the book, but I haven't read it. So when it came to the parts where she started talking about Ready Player One, I skipped over them because I don't want to know because the book is always better than the movie.
Yeah.
And I don't want to know the pieces that the movie missed out until I read the book. So just keep that in mind. And then in this first chapter, she goes into detail for all the things your hero is going to need. And that's the point of this first chapter.
Exactly. And I like how she gives you hints and ways to make your character, your hero, first to figure out who the hero should be of your story.
And sometimes it's not who you think it is.
That's true. And she gives a great example of that. And also creating, I think she says, believable, interesting, and memorable heroes comes down to 3 basic things. And she walks you through those in the book. And it's not a spoiler to say, because you'll see those in other writing classes and other methods and models, but that flaw, that want, and that need, those are the 3 things. And she explains them in a really good way in the book.
Yeah. And I didn't know that's what my characters needed because I've always pantsed it and I've just, I've never really paid attention. But going through this and like really paying attention to what she said really has helped me develop the book that I'm working on. So yeah. I'm glad she did that.
I found it, I had a lot to work through when I first started reading this book. I think I made the mistake that a lot of new authors make, and that is I made my hero perfect. The only thing wrong with her was she had been abandoned as a child, which was not something she did, but she was perfect. So I had to make her less perfect. It was hard. And I had to reread this chapter several times to give her those that, the flaw, she has to have flaws. They do, I like the way Jessica Brody talks about it in the book about how audiences, whether it's in a movie theater or reading a book, they don't want to read about perfect heroes. You can't relate to someone who has no flaws.
Right. Yeah. Something else she points out is that your hero is going to change along the way.
Yes.
And I think a joke that I hear a lot when I hear people talking about their characters and how their story's going is that she did something I wasn't expecting her to do. Or where did that person come from? Like, it's like it just, and you have to give yourself the okay to let that happen. If you try to stop it, then your story's not going to do what it needs to do. Now, it's very possible your first draft, it's called zero draft. Like, it doesn't count, right? So get everything on the paper and follow these steps. And then when you go back to edit, if that character that just appeared out of nowhere that you didn't even know existed until 5 minutes ago, if it fits, great. If it doesn't, take it out. But make sure you let your brain get it all on the paper as you go through the steps, so that later you're not going, wait, that character that I thought of that I didn't think fit actually fit. What were they? Who were they? What were they doing? Like, get it on paper, and then you can cut it if you need to. So I like how she goes on to, they're going to change. They're going to have flaws. They're going to have needs, and you have to figure that out and put that all out in the world for the world to see.
Right. And she does talk about also how, and this is something that new authors don't always get, and that is make their want. They have to have that. She talks a little bit in this chapter about the conflict. It's got to be hard for them to get. It can't be easy. Your readers have to root for something, and they're going to root for triumph in a few areas. If you've got those 3 things covered, they're going to root for the character to change, and they're going to root for the character to get what they want or not get what they want if they know that what your character wants is not good for them. That could happen.
Right. Yeah. She also, I'm on page 15. Did you have anything you want to say before that? Okay. On page 15, she also talks about there's a B story. Like, there's a story within the story. And she goes through and explains like what it is and how to develop it. And in actuality, your B story is what your book is really about, and how to develop that, and how to get, how to help your book move along the way. And then she goes through 10 universal lessons. Yeah. Like, these are the things that if you pick up a successful book, a good book, and not all good books are successful, it depends on whose hand they get into, but a good book, they're going to have one of these things. Mm-hmm. Example would be sacrifice, heroism, overcoming greed. Another one would be duty, standing up for a cause. Like, every book is going to have one of these things in it. And I like how she goes through and explains what they are. And basically, your book needs to have one if you want it to make the test of time. If you want it to resonate. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. When I first started reading that 10 universal lessons, and it's the same with themes. When I get to themes anywhere before, I was like, I don't have a theme. I just want to write a fun book. I just want to write a book where people, beat each other up and beat up the bad guy and they win and all that stuff. That's all I want. Or I just want to write a romance. The boy meets girl falls in love, and then they live happily ever after. But the way she explains it is, no matter what the book is, there's some kind of universal lesson in all of the good books. And even in the simplest of stories, there's a universal lesson. And they're universal lessons because you're talking to and about human beings. And right. That's how they understand story. And that's how you tell story, whether you know it or not. So it's right. A really cool take on the whole theme thing.
Yeah, I really like how she goes through and tells you what they are and then gives you tips about them. So I thought that was cool. I also like on 17, who is your hero? The answer may not be as simple as you think.
Yeah.
So even though I think character A is who the book is about, it could really be about character C and figuring out who that is. And one of her comments is, your job is to play matchmaker and figure out which hero goes with which plot.
Yes, that
was very interesting.
A cool way to look at it. I agree with you on that one. And I loved her example of that she gave in the book, how a student she was working with, said her hero was, blank. And it actually, she was sitting there thinking about it, and they're like, no, it's not that person. It's this person, the one that I didn't even think about. But it's really cool. And I thought when I read that section, it made me think of stories that I've read where I wanted the story to be about someone else, or movies. I wanted this movie to be, I was like, I really like that character. Tell me more about that character.
But they get a spinoff because that character.
Yeah, exactly. But you have to know who your hero is, and the hero has to be right for the story. And that's basically what this first chapter is about. And it's very great lessons in here.
Right. The thing that she does at the end of each chapter is she goes through all the exercises and a check yourself. Like, these are all the things that should be covered. And did you do it? So I like that at the end of each chapter, she goes over like the Cliff Notes version, sort of what the chapter went about. So I like that she does that at the end of each chapter.
Yes, I think if you get the book just for the exercises and go through the exercises at the end of each chapter, of course, you actually need to have read the chapter to understand some of the exercises.
Yeah.
That it will help you to make a stronger story.
Yeah, completely agree. Yep.
Oh, I want to say one more thing about the exercises at the end of chapter 1. I actually, when I was stuck in my story, I had to highlight these, check yourself, and I had to keep rereading and going back. Is my hero's problem or flaw specific? That's one of them. I had to keep going back until I could check the box on that one. And I had to go back and tweak my story. And then I go back, oh, not yet. And I go back. So the check yourself really is valuable for building a good story, a good, strong story.
And I just thought of something. I wonder if when you make a questionnaire for your beta readers, if taking some of these questions at the check yourself would be good for inclusion in your beta reader questionnaire. Because you may think that your hero's problem or flaw was specific, but did you get the point across?
Yeah, that's true.
So this may be a good way to go about finding some of your beta reader questions.
I agree. It's a good idea.
Cool. All righty, chapter 2. What's chapter 2 about, Audrea?
Chapter 2 is about the beat sheet. Oh.
Which is like the whole point.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's a beat sheet?
It is the holy grail. It goes through all of the beats that your story should hit universal in order to be a good, engaging story. And there's 15. Am I getting that number right? 15 beats. And she outlines all of them and goes over all of them. So if you've ever been one of those, if you're one of those authors who hears about the beats, people talking about beats in classes or beats in forums, this will help you to know what the beats are and if you're hitting them. And so I found this really good. And what's really nice about the way she breaks them up into acts, like the beats that should be in Act 1, the beats that should be in Act 2, and also percentages of your story.
Yep.
What were you going to say about that?
No, I was going to say, I like how she's like, it's not just here it is, but here it is, here's the percentage, and here's how it should hit.
Yes. And she bases that on standard word counts for novels. She's got examples of children's novels, middle grade, rather, Harry Potter. You have the word count for Harry Potter. So basically, no matter what kind of book you're writing, you can figure out where the beat should hit in that story type.
Right. And I want to point out, there's a lot of people that I've seen in forums and stuff where they're like, oh my gosh, my book's only 65,000 words. I heard books have to be 100,000 words. Well, it depends on what you're writing. It depends on your genre. It depends on it depends on everything. Like, are you writing a novella? Because a novella is not going to be 100,000 words. Are you writing Harry Potter, or are you writing The Giver? Like, they're two completely different types of books, and they're not going to have the same word count. So I like how she breaks it down and gives you examples. And just so you know, The Giver has 43,617 words. Harry Potter is 96,000, and that's just one of the Sorcerer's Stone. So it's twice as long. So you got to keep that in mind. Don't think that because the book, your favorite book, has 125,000 words, that your book has to have 125,000 words. Okay. So yeah, so I like how she breaks that down. So don't get overwhelmed with the number of words your story has or doesn't have, because it's all based on the genre and who's going to read your book. Then she doesn't just give you the word count and where it goes. She breaks it down. She goes through every single one, tells you exactly what it is, where it goes, what should it include, what she means by it. And she does that for every step along the way.
Oh my gosh, she's explained every beat. So one of them is theme stated. That is a beat. And she explains what that is and where it should go, just like you said. So again, if you have always had trouble with beats, this is a great book to understand beats.
And I didn't even know their theme stated was a thing until I read this. And you should see, I've got so many things highlighted in this chapter because I was like, oh, like one of them is there's a character, I don't remember who exactly she's referring to here, but I think she's referring to the hero seeing the theme. Oh. But it's not time for them to see the theme. So they completely ignore it. Like, yeah, you're supposed to present it, but your hero's not supposed to get it yet. And they're supposed to completely, like, it doesn't exist. So I thought that was interesting.
Very cool. Yeah, I highlighted a lot in that chapter too. Actually, that chapter is, I did a lot of whiteboarding on the themes or not the themes, sorry, on the beats and where mine were hitting with my book, using this book to do that. And she has, even in here, she has a really cute little timeline.
Yep.
So you can see it visually. It's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. She does a great job of putting it all out there. And then when she goes through your act 1, then she gets into act 2, and there's something called break into 2. Didn't know that existed either. But she explains exactly what it is. And then she introduces the B story, which, again, being a noob, I had no idea. I just read a book. I knew I liked it. I never realized that these are the steps that it followed, right? But if you go back, I will say, I really enjoyed reading The Help. And when I go back and I think about all the steps in that book, it totally falls right into all of this stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, that did happen, but I wasn't expecting that to happen. And so I like that she like really breaks it into everything, all of the things. Cause like I said, I thought a story would have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's just the way it was. I didn't know there were all of these things you were supposed to put in there to grab the reader and have them not, because I've read books where, okay, I won't tell you the book because I'm not enjoying the book. I bought a book recently at a used bookstore near us because literally they had shelves of this guy's book. There's like 15, 20 different books of this guy. Never heard of him before. They're like gripping masterpiece. And I'm like, yes. So I grabbed the first book. I'm on chapter 5 of the book. And I'm going, when's it going to get gripping? Like, where's the part that's going to make me want to keep reading? I even reread the back. And I'm like, so far, this is not the same book. Like, the character name is right, but when are they going to get to the... So, like, I'm debating whether I'm even going to finish this book because they haven't followed the themes to make me want to keep reading. And then there's other books, I don't care how many times I've read it, I'll stay up all night and read it again. Because even though I know it's coming, like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? So, yeah. Anyway, follow the beats, you'll grab your reader and they'll want to keep reading, which means they'll want to read your next book and your next book and your next book.
Yes. Yes,
which is, I mean, unless you just want to have one book, then that's great, but make it the best one you can.
Yeah.
Because then you won't need to write another one.
It's true.
So,
Very
okay.
True. Well,
I'll stop talking now.
Keep talking.
I'm gonna drink some coffee.
The one thing I wanted to say about the B story was the B story always irritated me because you're reading a book and you're like engrossed, oh my gosh. And then what happens? And you turn the page, it's not the next chapter, and it starts with like, is she gonna make it to the bake sale on time? Or the romance between the two characters. I'm like, that's not what I want to know. The killer was at the door with a baseball bat. I don't know where. And so I now have a better appreciation of the beat story now that I understand the whole function. And it's kind of like that. Well, first of all, it makes the story longer, but also it carries some of the emotion that helps to the B story. If it's written well, will shore up the A story, the main story.
Right.
So you kind of need that. And when especially in cozy mysteries, the B story is always there. But I'm often drawn through a series more by the B story than by whatever the A story is going to be. It's like, well, what's going to happen with Mrs. McGillicuddy and her sick cat? I really, that's like so far down in the story, but it's something that's it's written so well that I'm interested and compelled by it.
Something that I thought of while you were talking about Miss McGillicuddy's kitty cat is I've also read stories where they have forgotten that they had Mrs. McGillicuddy's kitty cat in there. And by the end of the story, you're going, but what happened to the cat? Right? So make sure that all your little pieces, you wrap them up. They don't have to be a pretty bow. It can be a very messy bow, but make sure you wrap it up unless you're writing a series and the end of the story is the beginning of the next story. That doesn't have to be wrapped up, but all the other little pieces need to be wrapped up, or you're going to have people going, well, that was crap. And now instead of a 5-star review, you're going to get a 1-star review because you never told them what happened to the cat. Doesn't matter how the rest of the story is. If you don't wrap it all up, they're going to, that one thing that really had nothing to do with anything that you probably should have taken out in the first place is going to get you a bad review because you didn't wrap it up. So just keep that in mind. I just thought of that off the cuff, like has nothing to do with anything.
But that's good. That's true. And when you were talking about that, it made me think of my other pet peeve when it comes to B stories. So of course, I hate it if they drop these breadcrumbs along and then they don't sweep them all up and do something at the end, or they don't tie all of those strings together and finish them off.
It's like, what was the point?
Yeah. Why would you even put that character in if you're not going to finish that part? That is so irritating. But what's also irritating is when you're building up all these storylines and you're getting to the end and the author wraps it up like that. Like it makes some easy thing and ties it up. And it's like, well, that was, I mean, they took the easy way out. They didn't spend any time wrapping things up. They just closed it all like that. And it was too easy and it was not satisfying. And I wanted to say that if you are using these percentages in the beat sheet, the way that it's outlined in this book or other books, that you will have that pacing that you need to wrap things up in a natural manner so that it's not too fast or too abrupt for your readers. And they're just like, don't leave their readers unsatisfied, either with stories that are not wrapped, B stories or plots that are not wrapped up, or you wrap them up too easily and too quickly there's no chance for a good resolution or denouement, basically.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally and completely agree with that. Yes.
Breaking out my grade school French on the denouement.
She also points out on page 53, she says, how do we raise the stakes? And then she goes through, because this is your midpoint, she goes through different ways that you can up it up a little bit to keep people in, to keep your reader wanting to continue to read your story.
Yep, she does a great job of and I really like that she didn't just go beat by beat, but she put it in the act. So you should know, I'm in Act 3 right now, and this is stuff that should be happening in Act 3. And these are the things I need to start wrapping up and give some ideas or some examples of how to do that.
Yeah. I mean, literally, I mean, Audrea said earlier, if you buy it just for the exercises, great. The first time around though, read it. It's so chocked full of good information of what to do and where to do and how to do. Like, read it.
It's chock full of goodness.
It is. Read it with a highlighter.
Yes. Yeah.
And sticky tabs. Sticky tabs. All right. So let's see what else on this chapter. I think that was the last thing I had.
Well, I like to talk about the exercises, and this one is the exercise in the end of this chapter is the transformation test, is what she calls it.
Yes.
And I love how she phrases it. Use this handy self-workshop checklist to make sure your beats pass the transformation test. So another one, and in my book, you can see that for the story I was working on while I was reading it, I was checking the box, circling when I needed to come back. And I have a circle. Nope, I haven't hit that one yet. I haven't clearly established your hero's want or external goal somewhere in this beat. So I circled it. And then when I wrapped it up, I came back and checked that box. And for a lot of these, I wrote out what that scene was, or the name of the character that states the theme, or whatever it was. So the end of this chapter is also a really good one. Oh, I want to say that for our subscribers, and you can subscribe on our, the link is to our website is in the show notes, or you can go to our website. That link is in the show notes as well. And when you sign up to be a subscriber, you get some handy dandy cheat sheets for Save the Cat.
Yes. Cool. Anything else on this chapter?
Nothing else for this chapter.
Okay.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is all about, she starts explaining genres. And I like the title. It's Not Your Mother's Genre. And she goes through, just in this chapter, she goes through the titles of what the genres are, what the different genres are. And after this chapter is when she deep dives into it. But in this one, she explains what they are, why we need them, and then she explains what a bleeding genre is. Because some genres don't fit into a nice little box. Mm-hmm. I was almost about to give an example that we used to jokingly use in the Stop Writing Alone, but I'm not, because I don't want your kids asking.
Don't do it.
So we're gonna pass by that one, but just know that, especially recently, I've heard people giving a genre that their book is in, and I'm like, I guess they made that one up because, okay, but then they'll be, oh yeah, I write that too. Okay, well, at least 2 people know what it is. So keep in mind that even though you might be writing, the joke in the group is that when I write, people die. So you might be writing something where people die. However, there could be something else in there that makes it multi-genre, makes it not just a detective series. Maybe it's an urban fantasy detective series, like because of all the pieces. So I like how she explains and actually gives a couple of instances of bleeding genre books.
I will say about this chapter when we got to this one, because I'd been doing, as authors must, some research on my genre so that I could make sure that I understand the genre, and hopefully my book will sell better if I understand the readers, what readers
yes.
like.
You don't want to disappoint your reader if they're expecting one thing and then you don't understand what it is they're expecting.
Exactly so. So when I got to this chapter and of Not Your Mother's genres, and she breaks them out into genres that are not your typical genre, like mystery. She doesn't say mystery or sci-fi or these, and I'm like, I got to that, I'm like, oh gosh, somebody else has another way of breaking out genres. I can't take it. Oh, woe is me. But the way she breaks it down, the typical genre names fit underneath these. And so they're called the Save the Cat genres, just because they're more universal.
Yeah. And I like one of them is Dude with a Problem. Like, yeah, I like how it's monster in the house. Like, it's not just, thriller or YA fantasy. Like, it's, yeah. She gives you stuff. The other thing I want to note is that after this video, our series, the next 2 videos, make sure you check out the next 2, because Audrey and I will be discussing 4. I should probably get in the camera, shouldn't I? 4. I'm like, we're going to talk about 4. Yep, there's my wrist right there. So we're going to be talking about 4 of the genres. We each picked our favorite, and then we picked another one. Oh my gosh, my hand.
It's okay.
Let's do like this. Let's do like this. So the next 2 weeks, we'll be discussing 4 of the different genres. So it won't be all of them, but we'll pick out 4 to discuss.
Yeah. And so speaking of the Save the Cat genres, and you mentioned Dude with a Problem, and I do love that title. But Dude with a Problem, you can understand how that could be in a sci-fi book. You could be a dude with a problem in a sci-fi. You could be a dude with a problem in a mystery, in a YA. That crosses all of the major genres.
Urban fantasy.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, Dude with a Problem could even be a vampire, Yeah. I mean, Harry Potter could have been Dude with a Problem. I mean,
yeah.
He started out with a major problem, right? So, I mean, yeah. And actually the title, An Innocent Ordinary Hero Suddenly Finds Themselves. That's Harry Potter.
It's true.
I wonder what else Harry Potter fits into. See, there's your bleeding genres.
There you go. Well done. Well played, Amy. And that's chapter 3.
And that's chapter 3. So be sure to check out our next 2 videos as we discuss 4 of the genres. And then after that, we will wrap it up and tell you about our next book we are going to discuss. Right. Anything else from you, Audrea?
Nope. Make sure to go out and get the book if you have not, because it's a great book. And if you want to know which book we're going to do next, then make sure to subscribe to our newsletter. That's all.
Bye.